One of the most important parts of designing a website is to test your page in various web browsers. Because when it comes down to it, a web page is nothing more than a bunch of code, be it HTML, XHTML, or whatever. What you see when you view a page in a web browser is that browser's interpretation of the code, and each browser might interpret a page differently. Now, as time has gone by, browser standards have gotten a little bit more reliable, but it's still a good idea to check your pages in as many browsers as possible before launching it to the web. Of course, you may be one of those browser snobs saying, I designed my page for Firefox users and that's that. Which is fine as long as you don't mind that people coming to your site in other browsers might not be able to see the content the way you intended it. But if you're trying to reach as broad an audience as possible, you'll want to download and install all sorts of browsers like Firefox, Netscape, Opera, and the list goes on. At the very least, you should have the most current version of Internet Explorer, Netscape, and Firefox on your machine if you're on Windows. If you're on Mac, you should already have Safari, but you should probably also download and install Firefox and Netscape as well. If you're really serious about making sure your pages work, you'll want to check them cross-platform as well. So if you're designing on a Windows machine, you'll want to get a Mac and check out your pages there. And if you're designing on a Mac, you'll want to get a Windows machine and check your pages there. As I mentioned earlier, Dreamweaver does have some built-in tools for validating your page's code against different browser types. But if you want to know what your page looks like in a certain browser, check it out in that browser. And checking out your pages in a browser isn't just something you should do right before you're ready to upload them to the web. You should be checking at each step along the way so you can catch potential problems as you go along. So let's take a look at how we set up Dreamweaver to preview our pages in the browser or browsers of our choice. First, I'm going to open up Dreamweaver's preferences by going to Edit Preferences. If you're on the Mac, it'll be Dreamweaver Preferences. And I'm going to go to the Preview in Browser category here. In this area over here, Dreamweaver should already have your installed browsers listed. If not, click the plus button, add a name for the browser that you want to add, and then browse for that browser in your program files or in your applications folder if you're on a Mac. Notice in this area you can set up both a primary browser and a secondary browser. Your primary and secondary browsers are assigned keyboard commands to Dreamweaver, which makes them a lot easier to access. Let me cancel that for a moment. So let's say that Firefox, I'm going to make my primary browser, and Internet Explorer will be my secondary browser. So in this case, F12 will launch my primary browser, Control F12 launches my secondary browser. Now if you're on a Mac and using OS 10.4 Tiger, your F12 key has already been assigned by the operating system to launch your dashboard widgets. Unless, of course, you've changed that keyboard command. So in Dreamweaver, your primary browser is assigned to Option F12 and your secondary browser to Command F12. Now, before we leave this area, notice that there's an option down here to preview using a temporary file. If I check this box, every time I go to preview a page in a browser, Dreamweaver will generate a copy of the page in its current state and open that copy in my browser. It actually creates this temporary file. The advantage of this is that I won't have to save my page before I preview it. So if I'm not sure about a change that I made to the page, I don't have to save it, and Dreamweaver won't prompt me to save it. With this box unchecked, Dreamweaver is going to prompt me each time asking me, do you want to save the changes to this page before I actually go to preview it? So it's not really that big a deal if I do save it or don't save it, but it is going to ask me each time if I have unsaved changes. So it's up to you to decide whether that's going to be too much of a hassle. If you think it is, just check Preview using Temporary File, and Dreamweaver won't bother asking you to save your file first. I'm going to leave my option checked and click on OK. So now with some content on my page, if I want to see what that looks like in my browser, all I have to do is press F12. And it opens it up in my primary browser, in this case, Firefox. Or if I want to see it in my secondary browser, Control F12. And it opens it up in Internet Explorer. Now, if you recall, we also have this button in our document toolbar that allows us to access all of our installed browsers. So if I had more browsers installed in here, like if I had Netscape, I could add that in my preferences and it too would be listed here. So if I didn't want to make that my primary secondary browser, I could access that from this list. And just so you know, you can also get to your installed browsers by going to File, Preview in Browser, and you'll see the same list here. And that's how we set up our preferred web browsers.